Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of TOG Chat. Hello, Laurel. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Bob?
I'm doing well. Well, we were sitting here today trying to think about what a good topic would be, and we realized we've never really talked about, or if we have, it's been quite a while, running a major gift program. And so, not the moves management aspects of it, not how we build relationships with individual donors, but like what does it take to actually have an effective program as opposed to occasionally getting major gifts from individual donors? But like, how do we scale it? How do we do it consistently? What needs to be in place? What should we be thinking about? um yeah, so I thought that might be we thought that might be a good topic for us to talk about today. So maybe we can start off, Laurel. When you think about running a major gift program, I mean, there's obviously a lot of things that are pretty important, but what pops into your head as like being one of the most important considerations or structures or systems that need to be set up to have an effective program?
Yeah, it's there's so many. How do I pick? Yeah, we often talk about like the convergence of kind of culture and systems, right? That we kind of need both to make everything work. But I do think with major gifts, we tend to just kind of the systems are like an afterthought, right? It's like no more about, well, how do I get in front of people and how do I, what do I say and all those kinds of things. And I think, well, if we don't have really good systems, then do we know we're getting in front of the right people? Are we prioritizing effectively? Are we not just getting overwhelmed by everything? And are we being really strategic and intentional? So I guess if I get to pick the first one, I'm gonna maybe pick the
You.
most obvious and overarching one, which is just having a good CRM, right? Like just having and I'm not saying good, like most expensive or fanciest or the one that everybody is on, but one that works for you. I mean, I think in this day and age, there are so many development oriented CRM, constituent relationship management systems that do what you need them to do. I don't think you need to spend, tens of thousands of dollars a year. I think there's a lot of smaller systems that work really well. I think also just making sure that you have a CRM that you can use, one that isn't too complicated, that doesn't require, a data expert to run the back end of if you don't have a data expert to run the back end of it. But having a system that is usable, that is something that can both keep information for you but also be used as a way to plan out future activities and then go back and track metrics. So that's like the big overarching one that I would probably start with.
Yeah, I like that. And I would add too, like for me, when I think about CRMs, is it how easily can I generate information for my volunteers in a way that they're going to be usable so that they have, can you easily generate a tickler report? Can you easily generate research profiles? Are there ways of passing on information easily to your volunteers so that they can, that they can get to work on your behalf? I guess for me, the biggest thing is really having a calendar of engagement that you've really thought out for the course of, I would say, 12 months or so. Because what can happen, unless you're a university where you have alumni, or you're in some other situation where you have a natural constituency, it's long term, and you don't have to go find those constituents in some manner. What happens is it can be really hard to find those constituents, and we can want to run a major gift program, and we can even have a major gift officer. But if we don't have a way for that major gift officer to engage with your donors other than cold calling them, then it can be really hard. You can burn out people, it can frustrate people. And so really thinking about what are regular ways that a donor can engage with the organization, putting them on a calendar, making sure that there's a diversity of ways of engaging with people. So some big events, some small events, some panel discussions, some one-on-ones with a CEO. I think it can be as simple as just every month having the CEO or the ED have sponsor a breakfast at the local diner where you spend, $60 for 3 or 4 people to come and talk about your vision. But I think the key to it is like one, having a sufficient number of them so that if I can't go to this, I can go to the next one. Or if I'm not actively being solicited for cultivated for a major gift, I'm still engaging. There's still work going on in the background. So having a sufficient number of, a sufficient number, I think is a big part of this. And then having a diversity, like I'm not going to that many breakfasts. That's just me. But I probably can go to a lunch, and even better, I could probably do something after work. For other people, it's going to be the exact opposite of that. But just having different ways to engage, and having a diversity so that, oh, you can't come to this donor. Well, there's this other thing coming up, or can you come to this? And it just kind of lays the groundwork for that ensures that some cultivation is going on, regardless of whether you're sort of actively cultivating this person or not. And it can also be a great way to qualify donors too, right? Like we can invite people, and instead of one-on-one meeting with them and to discover that they're not that interested, or they don't have enough money, or whatever it is, we can get a bunch of people in a space, and kind of figure out who might be interested in taking the journey a little further with us. So to me, that's a key, and I find that a lot of folks do that on a much more ad hoc basis. It's not that it doesn't happen, but it's just not planned out, and it's not necessarily planned out in a way that's tied to their table of gifts. Meaning, like we know how many prospects we need. Do we have sufficient engagement opportunities to realistically generate those prospects? So that's what comes in mind to me for me. Um, so what else? What else should we be thinking about in your mind? We have a great CRM now. Now we have a really good calendar of engagement and suite of engagement opportunities. What else do we need?
So you just said it, a table of gifts, right? I mean, goodness gracious. Like if I had a client once joke that he thought I had the table of gifts tattooed on my back, because I don't ever stop talking about it. And ultimately, table of gifts, you should have one for your entire revenue budget, and you should have them for each of your events and each of your revenue lines, right? But understanding for your individual major gifts program, your table of gifts is so key because it helps you to understand, to your point, what do we need to do for prospecting? How many vision meetings? And I'll just point folks, we've been talking, Bob just talked a lot about kind of calendar of small engagements. We just, one of our chats a month or so ago was on the power of small events. So if that piqued your interest, go check out that chat as well. Because I think we talked a lot about some of the different kinds of easy, cheap, replicable, scalable small events that can be really powerful. But how do I even know how many I need to have, or how many people I'm hoping to have attend each of those if I don't even know how many prospects I need to hit the goal that I want to hit? I also think that one of the questions we get asked, I don't know if you get asked, one of the questions I get asked all the time about major gifts is, well, how do I know how much to ask for? Right? Which is, such a nebulous question because it depends, right? It depends on where this person is in their life cycle with the organization. An interim gift on the way to the ultimate major gift? Is this the major gift ask? Is right? I also think your table of gifts helps you dictate how much you need to ask for based on how much you need to raise, right? So you can kind of see, well, I need I still haven't identified enough prospects at the $50,000 level. I've got these two donors who gave 25 last year. Is this the year I try to upgrade them to 50,000, versus trying to go out and find new prospects who are going to give first time gifts at that level, right? So, it's in many ways the thing that both helps you know if you're on track to hit your revenue goals, but it's also the thing that can help you figure out where can I push maybe some of these individual donor goals, and where can I maybe let people sit if I still feel like I need a little more time to just kind of get a renewed gift this year as I take them to the next step later.
Yeah, 100%. And the other tattoo that you might have, Laurel, is a case for support tattoo. I don't know what that looks like, but if I were gonna pick tattoos for you, the number two might be the case for support. So you certainly talked to me about it lots of times, and I'm 100% in agreement. And I guess when we talk about the case for support, we do mean the written document, but I think we also mean sort of case for support and with a small c, in the sense of, can you articulate, whether it be written, whether it be orally, whether it be through a PowerPoint, whatever it might be, why I should give you this money and beyond, what I might give for an annual fund gift. And I think it's really helpful to remember that you're in a marketplace. You are, if we were talking about high net worth individuals, or even people who are, maybe at a point in their life where they're not super rich, but they have an opportunity to make major gifts, just because they're at that age where they're able to do that. Um, they're not making an infinite number of these, right? They're making decisions about, well, maybe I only make one major gift every few years, or maybe I make multiple major gifts a year, but I'm not making 20 major gifts, right? I'm making 5 major gifts. I'm making 6 major gifts. And so, unlike with, I think, annual fundraising, where you can ask people for lots of $50 gifts, $100 gifts, there's not necessarily like a clearly defined sort of limit on what that, those kind of gifts you might make. I think a typical person, if asked, might give quite a few of those gifts. But with major gifts, you're really making decisions about, like, this is a lot of money. I have to really decide where I'm going to have the most impact, and I need to understand what that impact is going to be. And the case for support is what really lets you do that. And it goes beyond, like, we're doing good work, which, let's posit that everyone on some level is doing good work, and really explains, like, this is our vision. This is the world we're trying to create. This is why making an investment in this particular project or organization or campaign, is really, the way to go. And if you don't have that, if you can't really provide the reason, then you're not likely to be able to persuade people to give you that major gift. Certainly not at scale, right? Like, again, maybe there's someone who just loves the organization and they just give you major gifts. But when we start talking about a major gift program, we're really talking about consistently raising money from a large number of people making major gifts to the organization. And so having that fundamental case for support and your table of gifts, that's right where it starts, I think. um,
Yeah, I will always make I said this once to a client, and I keep repeating it, and it is, there's no data, there's no research. This is the school of Laurel. This is the Laurel Research House that says this, that I believe that if you were to look at some of the most biggest major gifts that get made, that donors make, right? You take major donors and look at the biggest gifts that they make. I would argue that they do not make their biggest gifts to the organizations for which they have the most passion, that they make their biggest gifts to the organizations that have the best systems in place to engage them regularly through a good calendar, right? And who have made the case for why a gift of that size is going to have a significantly bigger impact than their annual gift, right? And I have no doubt that there are organizations that they feel incredibly passionate about, that they love, but who have never made the case to them for why a major gift will have a bigger impact than the mid-level annual gift that they make to them now. So that's something you control, right? Like that's in your control. You can do that. And yeah, so that's my dot on the end of your
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% correct. You have to give people the reason. Why aren't you getting $1 million? Because you haven't given your donor $1 million reason, or a $500,000 reason, or a $50,000 reason, whatever the size of your organization warrants. And so as part of that too, you had mentioned earlier, Laurel, like trying to, how do I know how much to ask somebody for? And I think an important part of that is having some sort of research function within your organization. And I think sometimes smaller organizations think that this is not something they need or they can't afford. But I think when you're a smaller organization, you maybe need it even more in some ways than you do in a larger organization because your time is so precious and your resources are so precious. So just understanding like who has the capacity and the inclination to even be a major gift prospect. Where are you spending your time and effort in terms of cultivation? And so, I think that can be everything from, well, purchasing a wealth screening, which I think you and I are both fans of just as a time-saving device. And, if you're not, a major university where you have 20 people in your research department, it's a quick and dirty way of just kind of giving yourself a sense of who you maybe should be talking to. You can always data mine as well, like who's been giving on a regular basis, who has been, maybe gives above their average. The average annual fund gift for your organization has done that for a long time. Maybe who's increasing their gift year to year to year without much work from you, are all indicators of wealth. Back in the day, and this, I'll date myself a little bit, and this, I would always look out for, what envelopes have like trust on them, or, who's paying with, the traditional Amex card, or all kind of ways of starting to think about, who might be a good prospect. But understanding that, I think, is a pretty important part of it. And then it gives you a good sense of who goes on the table of gifts and where do they go on the table of gifts, as well. And so, well, screening, I think, I think you can't take their algorithms too seriously, but at least they can give you the raw data. I think you do still have to look under the hood and say, well, why are they saying this, and see if you agree. But getting that basic information to me is a pretty big time saver and a pretty important part of this work. So you're spending your time on the people that can have the most impact for you.
Yeah. Well, and you and you said something that was important, which is capacity and inclination, right? So just because somebody has on paper capacity to give doesn't mean that they do give it at all, right? Just because I can be philanthropic doesn't mean I am. And oftentimes, if someone is just generally not philanthropic, that is not something we are going to change about them. As I always say, like a miser is a miser. And just because somebody gives philanthropically doesn't mean that they give to philanthropies like you. And so, understanding inclination and both to be philanthropic generally, but also to be philanthropic to organizations like yours. And I will just kind of one other note about that. We work with a lot of civic engagement organizations, and I think a lot use political giving as because you get a lot of data from well screening companies about political giving, and I will just caution folks about that, because strong giving to C4s and to political campaigns can be an indicator that they have similar values, that they have similar interests that your organization might have, but it is not necessarily an indicator that they give a lot of money to C3 philanthropy. So I would just say it can be an indicator, but I hear a lot of folks like, well, they give all this money to X, Y, and Z campaigns. They should, my favorite, they should give to us. And I think, well, nobody should do anything. They do things, right? So anyway, I just throw that out there as another caution around well screening data.
Yeah, 100%. And then I would say for me, I don't know. I don't want to say the last. It's just the last one that's occurring to me right now. But you'll probably say something. I'll think of something something else too. I think having a volunteer be helpful with this is also like a pretty important part of this work, as well. It's hard to do individual fundraising on your own, just as staff. You really do need help. You need to have some acquisition engine, and when it comes to major gifts, usually the best acquisition engine is your volunteers. These are the people, your board, but it is not limited to your board. But these are the people who have connections within the community who can advocate on your behalf, make connections on your behalf, really find the people who can, support the organization. Because I find that lots of times we've kind of set up this major gift program, and maybe this was the impetus for us talking about this. Like we have the major gift officer and we have the director of development, and we're all on board with it, but we don't have the mechanisms for actually making it go. Like I remember talking to one client not so long ago, and they had built this textbook, fundraising program. I'm like, you have a Ferrari, but it's driving down a dirt road, because you don't have the things that are where you can use the Ferrari. And I think that's what we're really talking about today. And the volunteers are the folks, or one of the ways that you can bring in new people, identify major gift prospects, get that pipeline going. And without it, you can have all the other things we talked about here today. But if you don't have a way, again, of bringing people into the organization on a regular basis, it's pretty hard to do this work.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'll just tack on to that, systems for giving those folks tools, resources, follow-ups. I think a lot of times with our board and with other volunteers, we kind of do this thing where we say things like, "We'll open doors, raise money," right? I've been doing this for 25 years and I don't know what those things, if I, when I'm on a board and somebody tells me to open doors and go raise money, even I don't know what they want me to do, right? And so be specific, have again, part of in your CRM or whatever, Asana or whatever you're using as your tickler and follow-up system, have reminders for you to say, check in a week before the deadline I gave them, to be like, how's it going? Do you need anything? Here's the very specific 5 phone calls that I asked you to make. How have you made them? Right. But be really specific with what you want folks to do. Give them the tools and resources they need to do it, and then follow up, not 2 weeks after they said they were going to do it, but along the way. So yeah, that's the other thing I would just add to that piece. Yeah. So, in general, like, be strategic and be intentional. Like, major gifts don't just happen, right?
Mhm.
They happen because we are being strategic and we're being intentional. And to do that, we need a system, right? So we need to know, how much money do we need to raise? Who are we going to raise it from? And how are we going to hold ourselves accountable to all of the next steps that need to get done? I mean, major gifts is just a series of next actions, right? Planning
Yeah.
out the next actions and making sure that we follow up on them and do them. And when we get stuck, it's usually because we either didn't plan out what we needed to do, or we didn't follow up and we didn't actually do the things we said we needed to do. So your systems become just such an important part of making all of that happen. There was a colleague years ago, I was co-training with him, and he said, development is there's nothing sexy about it. There's nothing flashy. There's no silver bullets. He said, good development is doing the right things over and over and over again.
Definitely. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I mean, I think I would end on a very similar note to saying, like, I used to have when I was a frontline fundraiser, up on my in front of my desk, what have you done about major gifts lately? Because to your point, it's very strategic. It's very easy to do other things, but you're going to fail if you're not consistently doing the work. Like you said, it's very straightforward. It's not rocket science, but you do have to do the work. You do have to consistently put that one foot in front of the other. And so I would always just remind myself, like, if you're not doing some little thing every day, you're probably not really operating a program. You're doing it in an ad hoc manner. And so you can have the systems, but you have to actually implement the systems as well. So yeah, I think this has been a good topic. And the Osborne Group has lots of resources around major gifts. It's a lot of what we do as a consultancy. So if you like more information, as always, you can contact us at mail@theosborngroup.com, or leave a note on the blog, or whatever the best way to do it is, or contact Laurel or I directly. But thanks, Laurel. This was always good to chat with you. And we'll see everyone again on the next TOG chat.
Bye.